On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very delightful treat. She's the co-founder and CEO of Whole30, a multiple-time New York Times best-selling author, a dynamic podcast host, a global speaker, recovery advocate, and super entrepreneur. No big deal. After spending some time in rehab while on the road to recovery, she reinvented herself when she began a two-person dietary experiment that would permanently transform her health and her relationship with food and her body, thus leading to the creation of Whole30. She has helped millions of people create lasting, sustainable habits and change their lives, including writing a plethora of books, helping humans all over the world. She dives in on helping people set boundaries around food, drink, and diet talk, something she discovered people really struggled with, especially in social situations, which I can totally relate to. Her ability to use her value system to show up exactly as she is and be willing to talk about the hard stuff first is second to none. She's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific mother and human. Please welcome the radiant, inspiring, and wise, the beautiful and authentic Melissa Urban. How you doing, Melissa?
Well, that's quite an intro. After that, I better be doing okay. It's great to be here, Craig. Thanks for having me.
I couldn't be more excited. We were chatting for a while before we went on air. And right away, as soon as I saw your energy, there's an expression. I think it's your energy introduces you before you even speak. And I totally felt that with you. Couldn't be more excited. For our listeners, in case you're not familiar with Melissa, my best suggestion is to do a deep dive, play catch up, read her books, check out her awesome content, see what she's got going on. What I think is most valuable today is we just have an unbelievable conversation. Before we dive in, we're going to get a little weird. You ready for me?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Melissa, what is your superpower?
Oh, I would say empathy, which is like not what I would have expected to say 10 years ago, because it was not something that came naturally to me. It's definitely been a skill that I have built, but I think it's empathy today.
I knew there was going to be a ton of alignment here, but right out the gate, my goodness, it's funny because I'm so empathetic these days, almost to a fault, where my fiance, who's a bit more savage than me, she's from Ukraine, and sometimes she'll call me out, but I've become so empathetic, but I used to not be. So it's a skill that I developed as well. And I'm just curious, does it ever bite you in the butt, or you just obviously want the best for everybody and you wouldn't change a thing?
No, it's not that kind of empathy. It's
Okay.
because I have incredible boundaries. It
Mm.
is the kind of empathy that allows me to pause and try to think about what this person's lived experience would be, especially if it's different than my own, and use that to inform how I choose to respond or engage or communicate with that person. That's the kind of empathy I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm glad I asked because that definitely distinguishes it. I wanted to ask you one more fun one before we dive in. I'm just curious. When you wake up every single day, what are some non-negotiables for you?
My morning routine is like pristine. It is a definite non-negotiable, the entire routine. So I wake up in the morning, I do not look at my phone. I take a cold shower, I get myself ready for the gym, and I go do some kind of movement session. I'm still not looking at my phone unless it's to like turn on music. So I do, workout, a hike, a yoga session. I meditate after that movement session. I come home, I make myself something to eat, and then my day starts. So nothing gets in the way of the morning routine, even if I have to abbreviate it unless it's an emergency. That is a non-negotiable.
I love it, and I can totally relate. And I'm just curious, in regards to working out, all is that 7 days a week?
No, I'll do something every single day, but some days it's like a really easy walk around the neighborhood. Some days I might throw on a rucksack and go for a rock. Other days I might go into the gym and just do a mobility session or just do a really easy yoga session. So I'm moving every day, but not too much. Like I'm adequately recovering from all of my workouts. Yeah.
Understood. And I was checking out your content a little earlier, which I highly suggest everybody do immediately following this episode. And I saw you talking about something that I never quite heard before, and I found it very interesting. It was a yog.
Yeah. Yeah. A yog.
Tell us
Uh,
more.
I'm not a runner. I used to run. I did a couple triathlons. I did a couple half marathons, but not in many, many years. Now I prefer to hike instead. But every once in a while, I'll feel like kicking my heels up. So I go for what I call a jog. I'm not running, but I'm not walking. It's very slow. It's very relaxed, but it's just like a pace that feels good and one that I can kind of sustain, mostly doing like nasal breathing. And yeah, I just call it a jog.
Yeah, this is great. There's so many cool places we could take this conversation. Obviously, I want to hit on all the exciting stuff you have going on now, and a lot of the cool topics that you love to talk about. One of the reasons why I love them so much is because I think they're relatable to everybody, right? It's not like someone that listens to your content, it's only for like entrepreneurs or very niche. No, like boundaries and doing hard things are a part of life for everybody. And one of the really cool things that you talk about is doing hard things. And for someone listening right now, like right out the gate, what is something tangible that we can give them where they can start to begin to do hard things and cultivate some confidence?
I mean, I think what I have learned is that there is incredible power in learning how to be uncomfortable. And the more I'm willing to sit with a negative emotion, the more I'm willing to acknowledge, okay, this feels big and awful, but I'm not going to numb. I'm not going to distract. I'm not going to, kind of try to wiggle my way out of it. I'm just going to exist in it, get curious about it, approach it with curiosity and not judgment. The more capable I feel, it's good for my nervous system. It's good for me to recognize that like I can do hard things. It's good for me to realize that I can sit in this discomfort and like I'm okay. It's not fun, but it's okay. And I found that that translates in a positive way into every single area of my life.
I could not agree more. And it's funny because a lot of people look at what I'm doing and they think it was like an overnight success. Little do they know I'm, working a lot, although it's not work to me. I love this stuff. But also I had been working on myself for 15 years. I just finally put it all together. And as I like to say, it doesn't take time, it just takes alignment. But one thing that I haven't talked about as much, and I'm excited to share it in the book when it comes out in August, is the season between like kind of being miserable on Wall Street and what I'm doing now. There was one thing that specifically that really helped me get confidence, and that was the marathon season. Because up until that point, I had never been a runner before. I lifted weights and stuff like that. Fitness was always important to me, but you couldn't pay me to run. And ironically, now I pay to run. But that season specifically really taught me that I can do tough things. And you just said, like, you think that's transferable to other areas of your life. I could not agree more. And I think that's so valuable for everybody listening today. Like if you're going through it or you just want to start to practice taking uncomfortable action, sign up for something that sounds challenging or sounds intimidating. Just have it in the calendar and work towards it. And once you do it and you don't die, you can use that as a point of reference to really do better in anything, any area of life, right?
Yeah, it's a really big self-confidence booster. And some people I think do need those physical challenges, right? We need to remind ourselves that our bodies are strong. And when our brain is telling us that we have to stop, we, have the empowering experience of saying like, no, I can dig a little deeper. I can go a little harder. And I've had those physical experiences as well. And they're so beneficial. And then at other times, we may need something that is more emotionally challenging in nature. In nature, we may need to sit with an emotional discomfort. We may need to speak the boundary that we've been holding on to for such a long time. We may need to put ourselves first for the first time, maybe in our whole life. So there are different forms of discomfort. And I think exposing yourself to all of them, or at least the right one in the right dose at the right time, can be really, really helpful.
You're on fire. So there's that. It's so interesting because I recently started implementing a ton of boundaries. And at first it was a bit uncomfortable and you feel maybe bad, like, but then it kind of becomes intoxicating because what you're really saying to yourself is that you're prioritizing your own well-being, right? And how you want to feel. And obviously the better that we feel, the better we can be for the world, our kids, our spouse, our relationships, everyone, or whatever the case may be. It reminds me of like the the example that you do on the airplanes. Like you put your oxygen mask on first before
Yeah.
you help others. And I never really used to understand that, but now I totally do. And I imagine there's someone out there that wants to start doing this because they know how freeing it is and how good it is for you. But maybe they feel bad to hurt someone's feelings or whatever the case may be. I hear this all the time. Well, how do you handle a situation like that?
I mean, I wrote a whole book about it because boundaries are a really scary practice for so many people. I think for a number of reasons. First, and I'll say especially true of women and especially true of moms, we have been societally conditioned to not have needs and to be small and to be compliant and not take up space and put everyone else's needs and comfort ahead of our own. And then in our family units or on the job or with our friend group, boundaries have not been modeled for us. They're one of those life skills that nobody ever teaches you. So there are people who probably benefit from us having no boundaries, and they probably want us to feel bad and want us to feel guilty when we advocate for ourselves. So we have all of these different systems working against us. And then we have this concept of like unearned guilt. We feel guilty just for advocating for our own needs and feelings, almost as if our own needs and feelings don't matter as much as anybody else's. So, all of these kind of systems combine such that when we even think about, well, what do I need? Or what would make me comfortable? Or how can I take care of myself in this moment? We often don't even get to the place where we think about the boundary we might need to set because the idea of it feels so selfish or feels so scary that we don't even begin the process. And that's literally why I wrote the book, to
Yeah.
help people, get started.
This is so good. And when I talk about boundaries these days, something that I feel like correlates to it is authenticity, because I feel like once you set boundaries because something's not a hell yes, or it doesn't feel good to you, you're being authentic with yourself. But if you slip up, right? If you say yes to something that you know is going to drain you, or you don't want to be there, whatever the case may be, in essence, you're out of congruency, right? You're inauthentic to yourself. And I think that's so important, is to maintain that you stay true and honest with yourself, even if that makes some tough decisions at first. But ultimately, the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be with it, right?
I mean, yes, practice absolutely does make it easier. And I think there's a big reframe that we need to do around the concept of boundaries before we even like get started in the conversation. A lot of people think boundaries are about telling other people what to do, and that's not true. Boundaries don't tell other people what to do. They tell other people the actions that you are willing to take to keep yourself safe and healthy. The other thing is people think about boundaries as being punitive or that they're damaging to relationships, but boundaries are actually the kindest thing that you can do for your relationship, because when you speak your needs and feelings clearly and kindly, what you are saying is, I want you in my life. And I want our relationship to be good and to feel good. And I want to enjoy spending time with you. And there's this limit that I have that you probably didn't even know I had because you're not a mind reader. So I'm going to tell you what that is. And I'm going to invite you into this relationship in a way that feels good for both of us. In a boundaried relationship, we have trust, we have respect, we have safety. In a boundary-less relationship, we are showing up inauthentically, probably confusing the other person as to why we're showing up resentfully, begrudgingly, with anxiety or angrily, or avoiding them at all. And it really does lead to the downfall of a lot of relationships. Boundaries are how we preserve and protect our relationships.
You nailed it. And I know this is your thing, but you just brought me back to a feeling like I recall specific incidents where I would, before I was like a little bit more enlightened and evolved where I'm at now, and I'm nowhere near perfect, but I'm working on myself every day. Like when I would say yes, something that I really didn't want to, you subconsciously build up resentment to the person or the event that you're at. And it's not even really
Yes.
their fault. It's our fault for kind of not setting that boundary. And then that leads to a whole spiral situation.
Yes. Imagine you say to me, "Hey, Melissa, do you want to be on my podcast?" And I honestly like don't have capacity. I don't have the energy. I have too much going on. My mental health isn't good. I don't have time, but I say to you, yes, because I'm trying to be nice.
Mhm.
Right. And I'm trying to have this. And then I show up and I'm cold and I'm not as engaged and I'm distracted and I'm not as prepared and I don't have the experience that I want. And you're confused because you're like, you said yes. And now you're showing up and it seems like you don't want to be here. And that's really confusing for you because I didn't speak my mind. If you apply that to any other relationship, you can see how damaging it can be to not speak your truth and not advocate for your needs.
So good. So good. It's interesting. Like now at this season of my life, I say no a lot. I mean, for me, honestly, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And I know not everybody loves that around me, and I'm totally okay with that, right? Because I'm able to stay in this bubble of serenity, so to speak, and do better for the world. And obviously my important relationships benefit from that, and some of the other ones that I started saying no to, then I'm okay with however that turns out, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think that when you are willing to say no kindly, right? I'm not going to be a jerk about it, but if
Right.
I'm willing to say no kindly, my yeses have more meaning. So when I say to my friend, like, oh, no, you can't stay with us that weekend. It's not a good weekend. And she's like, okay, I get it. I'll stay in a hotel. And then the next time she says, hey, I'm in town. And I say, we would love for you to stay with us. She knows I mean it. I'm
Mhm.
not saying it just to be nice. She's not going to show up to like a weird environment. When you are willing to say no, your yeses have more meaning. And then you're able to preserve your time and your energy and your capacity for things that really do light you up.
That's an unbelievable reframe. That's so true. That reminds me of my brother, who's my best friend in the world. I only have one sibling, my older brother, and he's my biggest fan and supporter. So he knows like how intentional I am now with every interaction, everything. So when I say yes to something, I could tell he it's a bigger deal, so to
Yeah.
speak. I wanted to ask you because a lot of the stuff that I talk about, and I talk about a lot, but reinvention, because as I like to say, even if you don't like me, hard to believe, I know, you can't deny that I totally reinvented myself. I had one life forever, but really like 13 years on Wall Street. And then I totally pivoted in a whole new arena with no connections, no following. And we've had a ton of success. So I reinvented myself. And I think a lot of people here in this world know deep down that they're here for something more than they're currently doing. And I want to be an advocate that it's never too late. You can change everything the moment that you decide. So for me, that makes sense because I just kind of reinvented myself, but you're so passionate about the boundary stuff. It's awesome. And I'm just curious, like, what does that stem from? Like, was there a specific life experience that really made you lean into this awesome boundary stuff?
Yes. The first time I ever set a boundary, I had been in recovery for my drug addiction. A year later, I relapsed. I clawed my way back into recovery, and I once again found myself in a situation where I really didn't belong. At a party with people I didn't know, doing God knows what. Nobody knew I had relapsed. I did not feel safe, and I felt like my recovery and my very life were at risk in this moment. I didn't know if I would make it back a third time. And in that moment of sheer panic, an honest to God boundary tumbled out of my mouth. I said to my friend at this party, I can't be here. I don't feel safe. I need to leave. And that was the moment, I thought that advocating for my needs in my recovery, that telling people that I had relapsed and that I couldn't be, you can't do drugs around me anymore. Please stop. You can't offer me drugs anymore. You can't bring drugs into my house. I thought saying all of those things would isolate me. I thought that people would abandon me. I thought that I would feel even smaller and more lonely than I did. And it turns out that I realized that boundaries were the key to expanding my life beyond my wildest dreams. So that was a really pivotal moment for me. And I've been in recovery ever since. It's been 23 years now. But that was a really pivotal moment for me where I realized that boundaries, first of all, I needed to be responsible for me. I couldn't rely on anyone else to do it for me. And I had the power to do that for me. And that was really important.
That's so special. And first of all, I'm really proud of you. To be honest with you, I don't like what's the right thing to say. Like, is it congratulations? That's been
Yeah.
20. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Sure. Yeah. Congrats. Good job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And also, I asked you, and right away, you had a very specific moment, and it makes perfect sense. Like you have to know yourself, right? Like you can't be in that environment, you can't be around that situation, and that doesn't make you weak. That actually makes you stronger because now you're aware, and you
Yeah.
can transform from reactive to proactive, and you can do something about it.
Yes. And that was what I realized. I realized my friend in that party happened to be a very good friend. And he said to me, holy crap, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Like, what do you need? And he got me out of that party. Wonderful. But what I realized is that even if he hadn't, even if he laughed at me, even if he said that's dumb, even if he said, like, whatever, we'll just stay for a couple of drinks, I would have gotten myself out of that party. And that was the moment of empowerment that I really needed to be like, I can control my environment and my needs to the best of my ability to protect myself from this thing that I so desperately want to preserve. And I went on to set a million boundaries after that around my recovery with my friends, with my family, with work, with myself in order to like shore up and protect my recovery. And I think that was the key to not relapsing another time.
Yeah, so good. Did you distance yourself from a lot of people from that season of your life, or you're still close with a lot of people?
I'm still close with the friend from the party. He and I are still close. We still talk relatively, at least a couple times a year. And I'm still close with a few friends from that time period. It was the friends where I said, you can't bring drugs around me. You can't ever offer them to me no matter what I say. Even if I tell you I'm better, even if I like you can't do that. No, you can't smoke around me. Yes, I do mind. And if you're going to go out for like drinks, don't invite me, right? I can come out if you guys are going to like have a beer or two, but if you're going out for like drinks, don't invite me. The people who proved that they couldn't or wouldn't respect those boundaries, I cut without a single thought, without looking back, like gone. And the people who proved that they could or they were willing to try, like they stuck around and we ended up enjoying a new phase of our friendship in which I felt respected and I felt like they were trustworthy and it really ushered in a new era of like closeness to our relationship.
Hell yeah, good for you. It's still to this day, are you no longer around anyone that's having a drink or anything like that?
Oh no, now it's like now I don't really care. Now I'm at the point where like you can smoke pot in front of me if you want to. I don't have a lot of friends that still do that, but I don't really care. I don't drink right now anymore. I haven't in a while, but like I don't care if you drink, but I've also I think naturally and organically, my life has sort of just whittled away people that go out and drink heavily or that smoke cigarettes or that do drugs on a regular basis. Like I just don't have people like that in my life anymore as a very natural kind of evolutionary process.
Right, because you're super authentic to who you are now, and life will act as a true authentic filter. So
Yeah,
those types of cats that used to gravitate towards that version of you, that version of you no longer exists.
right.
So now you gravitate towards a different type of person to the person you are today and the person you're becoming. Same as me, a little different, but it's just I understand totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I saw something else that you wrote, which I thought was really interesting, and it said something along the lines of instead of distancing yourself from like the younger version of you that maybe when you're the one that you were just talking about, so to speak, instead of like being disappointed or this, that, the other thing, like acknowledge her and sit with her and thank her and tell her that she did the best she could at that time. And I just thought that was a really cool paradigm shift. And I imagine this could help so many people listening, maybe not the same exact scenario, but something similar. What exactly did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of therapy. And through my therapy and my own self-work, I've definitely done a lot of thinking about my past and who like younger Melissa was. I started using drugs after experiencing sexual abuse at the age of 16, and I didn't know how to handle it and I didn't know how to cope. And drugs were like the escape mechanism that I chose. And I spent a lot of years when I first entered into recovery kind of beating myself up for it. Like, man, you're a smart girl. You come from so much privilege. You have a family who cares about you and you have financial stability and like you have all of these things going for you. And like, why would you let yourself turn into this like lying, cheating, manipulative, stealing drug addict? And it wasn't until I started really unpacking my trauma and my addiction and my recovery that I recognized that 16-year-old me was saving our life in the only way she could. She did the best she could with the tools she had. And when I go back now and kind of do my therapy or my own work, I really embrace that version of me. That is not like a separate younger Melissa that I'm like trying to hide or shoo off to the side. That's a piece of who I am. And I'm really grateful to that girl for saving our life and doing the best that she could. And so when we have conversations now, I tell her, like, I really, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of what you did. And also, like, look where we are today. And like, I don't need you to take care of us anymore. I've got it now. I have all of these tools and all of these skills, and we're handling things so much differently than we were. And like, you can just go back and be a kid again. You don't have to worry about us anymore. And like, these are the kind of reparenting conversations that I have, and they've been really powerful for my healing, I think.
That's so beautiful. To be honest with you, I just got a little emotional thinking about as you would describe the story. And it's like, you can't change the past, but you can change the meaning you give it, right? And
Yeah.
a perspective can change everything. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you would have changed the thing because look where you are now. Look at the impact you're making. And you had to go through it to kind of get to where you are now. I think we all do to an extent. It's why pain is the portal.
Yeah. I never want to give credit to my trauma or my addiction for where I am today. That didn't do it. It was my resilience, right?
Mm.
It was my tenacity. It was my, willingness to kind of like get through it and sit through it. But yes, I am starting to look at what happened then, not from the perspective of 16-year-old Melissa, but from the perspective of adult Melissa. And I can look back on that now and say, like, yeah, it was shitty. And like, you didn't deserve it. And it happened to you and it was terrible. And also, I'm really proud of you for what you've chosen to do. I'm proud of you for how you handled it. And I'm proud of what you've chosen to do since.
Absolutely love it. Yeah. Such a good paradigm shift. I'm curious. You have so many cool, exciting things going on right now. Um, Today, what are you most excited about?
You
Where,
know, I have,
right?
yeah, I know. Where do I start? It's really interesting because, of course, the Book of Boundaries came out in October, and that's the first not Whole30 book I've written. And so it was really interesting to put time and energy and so much effort into a book that wasn't related to this business that I've been running and this brand that I've been building for the last 14 years. But it was really fun. And there's so much overlap between boundaries and the Whole30 program and the sort of kind of intersection of health and habits. And so I'm excited about kind of the MU track and talking more to people about boundaries and relationships and all of those other things that are so tangential to what I do at Whole30. But I'm also still really excited to continue to grow Whole30. I'm working on the next Whole30 book right now. We're, diving deep into some of the research to update the program rules. I'm super interested still in connecting with the community, hearing people's incredible Whole30 stories, helping them succeed by creating new resources and writing new articles. So I kind of have a foot in both camps right now, and I'm really enjoying that.
Okay, in case anyone can't see this right now, you just lit up like Rockefeller Center. I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I imagine there's some in the audience who might not know what that is just yet. Whole30.
Yeah.
Best way to describe it.
I know. Whole30 is a 30-day elimination program designed to change your health habits and relationship with food. So it's not a diet, it's not for weight loss, it's not a detox or a cleanse. Think of it like a self-experiment designed to teach you how the foods you've been eating impact you in your unique environment and give you the tools that you need to build the ideal sustainable diet for you based on your individual context.
Absolutely love it. And why did this become so important for you as you were making your transition really in life, but like in recovery and so forth?
So when I got into recovery for the last time, I really reinvented myself as a healthy person with healthy habits. I adopted what I now know was a growth mindset. I didn't know what it was then, but I was like, okay, if I'm going to make this recovery stick, I have to become the healthy person with healthy habits. Doesn't matter that I was snorting heroin 2 weeks ago. I am now a healthy person with healthy habits. And what would that person do? And I started going to the gym 5 mornings a week, and I started paying attention to what I eat, and I changed my clothes and the music I listened to, and I got a new job, and I really did change every aspect of my life through nutrition and my fitness, endeavors. I was really into self-experimentation, and in April 2009 I did this two-person self-experiment that would go on to become the Whole30. And I really thought that maybe changing the food that I put on my plate for 30 days would help my performance, maybe my recovery. I wasn't in it for weight loss. I felt like my energy was good, my sleep was good, but it had such a dramatic physiological effect in terms of my energy, sleep, mood, focus. More important though, it showed me the ways that I had been using food like I used to use drugs. It helped me dramatically change the way I navigated stress, difficult emotions, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, fear. I came out of those 30 days with an entirely new relationship with food and my body. And it was so powerful that I was like, I want to talk about this with people. And that was really how the Whole30 was born.
It's so beautiful. And I love the way you compared it. And also the way you talk about some of the stuff from your past, like you totally own all of that. And it's attractive, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, what else am I gonna do, right? I one of
Oh,
my kind of tenets is always to show up exactly as me.
yeah.
So yeah.
I could tell you had that type of awesome personality. Was there ever a time where like when you were kind of on the comeback, so to speak, that you, I mean, I'm sure you felt some shame and guilt and stuff like that, but like you didn't want to talk about this stuff and then you just totally owned it? Or right from the beginning, like this is what happened and I'm working on myself, all cards on the table.
No, it was a tiptoe. It was a tiptoe for sure. I spent a lot of time not talking about it. I founded Whole30, went on the road, started to do these like nutrition seminars, and people would come up to me after the seminar and they would be like, "Are you in recovery?" And I'm like, "What? How did you know?" And it's because I had built so much recovery language and like structure into the program and the resources I created without even realizing it, right? It was just me. So I was like, okay, I think I want to start talking about this. I do feel a lot of shame around my addiction. Here I am running this health company, And I wonder if I tell people like, hey, 10 years ago, I was a drug addict, if they would think less of me or if I would lose credibility. So I started sharing it and talking about it. And of course, the, feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And the more I shared, the more I realized that I didn't have to be ashamed. And talking about this stuff actually helped to relieve the shame. And from there, it just became like, okay, as I'm ready, as I feel like I'm processing things effectively with myself and my family and in therapy, like, what else can I share? And now I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I'll basically talk about anything. I do still have some boundaries, but like, if I can go first and give other people permission to talk about some of this stuff that has historically been very taboo, I'm happy to do that. I have a platform and like I'll use it for that.
I absolutely love this because similarly, like I didn't know what to share and what not to as well when I started becoming my personal brand, so to speak. And I'm an introvert, which might surprise you. But as I continued to share more and more, and some of the stuff that I wasn't so proud of and stuff like that, ironically, or maybe not, the community, the audience connected and resonated so much deeper. And it really changed everything. That was like a pivotal moment that really deepened the connection between us and the audience. People say they haven't seen a community so engaging and loyal, and so to speak. And it's because of what you just said. And now it's like, well, what else can I share? Because if people understand that that's what I went through, even though I'm not necessarily proud of it, then whatever someone is dealing with now, they too know that they can overcome. So being vulnerable essentially is a superpower.
Yeah, it is. And I do have some parameters around it, right? Brene Brown has this kind of framework that I've adopted where I share what's personal but not intimate. So there are a few things that I don't talk about on social media. My son, you will never see his face, you will never hear his name. He's 10 years old and like he does not exist. My husband and I got married a couple years ago, didn't tell anyone for 6 weeks because I needed that to be just for us. If I'm going through something emotionally, a medical issue or a mental health issue, I'm not going to talk about it until I feel like I have effectively processed it because I need to kind of keep that process for me. But after that, like all bets are off. I mean, I've talked about that one time I got chlamydia. I've talked about my divorce. I've talked about my recovery. I talk about small, dumb things like how hard it is for me to like empty the dishwasher. And those things are just, I think, really impactful because people look at the highlight reel on Instagram and they're like, oh man, like she must have it all together. And I'm like, no, I'm like still in my pajamas from 2 days ago and I can't figure out how to empty my dishwasher because it feels really hard. And talking about those things, I think, makes other people feel less alone. And that's a really nice feeling in today's often disconnected world.
I think that's so beautiful and absolutely love it. And especially the fact that you have parameters around what you do share. And like you didn't even tell anyone you got married for 6 weeks so that you guys could just be intimate and take that in, enjoy it. And there's no rules, right?
Mhm.
Like you could share whatever you want to share when you want to share it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're writing something about Mother's Day, right? Like you just want to do absolutely nothing. Is that right?
Yep. This is the year on Mother's Day that, and I mean, we've been working up towards this, and my new husband is like very committed to equal partnership and household management and childcare. But this was the year where I was like, I want to do what I want when I want to do it. I don't want you to have any plans at all because I don't want your plans to interfere with my plans. I will let you know what I want to do, and like it might be take off, it might be hang out with you, it might be whatever. But like if this is Mother's Day, then we're gonna do my day. And he was like, yeah, cool, we got it. And it was so fun and it was so easy. And I did not have to, sit around being resentful that I'm like planning and cooking for and cleaning up after my own Mother's Day dinner. We are not doing that this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just the thought of staying in your pajamas and chilling sounds like so peaceful right now.
It was I mean, we got up, I went to the gym, we went to brunch, I like went to the bookstore. I think I got a pedicure. I went for a walk by myself. Like it was just a nice chill day.
That sounds absolutely perfect, if I'm being
Mhm.
honest. I have to ask you about boundaries specifically when it comes to social media, because it's 2023. So this conversation is very relevant, right? Even if you're not a personal brand, which I would highly suggest everyone consider, or an entrepreneur, I imagine you have social media. And if you do, I imagine there's things that show up in your feed that might trigger you, whatever the case may be. How important is that to set major boundaries when it comes to social media? And what are some examples that you could provide?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I actually just talked about this in a reel that I did in collaboration with Instagram a couple weeks ago. But we often think about boundaries only in conjunction with other people, setting boundaries with other people in our relationship. but boundaries with yourself. Self boundaries is an often overlooked and incredibly powerful category because you don't need anyone else's cooperation. And setting and holding a boundary with yourself means that you can immediately reclaim some of your time, energy, capacity, and mental health. So I think self boundaries around social media are really important. One of the ones I have with myself is, again, I don't get on social media in the hour after I wake up or the hour before I go to bed.
Same.
No good comes of like scrolling through Twitter one last time before you go to bed. It is a recipe for disaster. So like that's a boundary I've set with myself.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Specifically in the mornings.
Yes. I also remind people often that you are in charge of your own feed. And if when you open your feed, it does not make you feel good, if you feel less confident, less successful, less worthy based on who is showing up in your feed, unfollow them immediately. I don't care if you know them in real life. You don't have to apologize for it. You don't have to explain. It's not about them, it's about you, but you are in control of what shows up. And I encourage you to cultivate your feed and your following and the people that you choose to connect with in a way that makes you feel good. Like you have the power to do that. And I want you to use that.
I think this is so good. And I want to just add on to that because I'm curious. If you see someone's on your feed that makes you feel some type of way, I totally understand unfollowing them or even block if need be. But should you also take a second and try to understand why that triggered you in the first place, or not even bother?
I think it depends. There is a certain category where I'm like, no, no, no. If your feed has things that are transphobic, homophobic, racist, like if our value system is so clearly misaligned, that's not a trigger or a difference of opinion. That is simply like you are not the right person I want in my life or in my, feed. That's an immediate unfollow. I'm not going to question that. But, sure, if I see a friend's post of her happily working out and I think to myself some jealous thought or some envious thought, I might say, like, wow, why am I having such a strong reaction to this? What's going on? Because I know it's never about them. It's always about me. There are certainly seasons in which I recognize it's not about them, it's about me. And also for my own mental health, I need to unfollow. When I was going through my divorce, which was like really painful and kind of public, I had to unfollow a few friends who were in the engagement or getting married phase. And it wasn't about them. And I recognized that it was fully about me. And also, I just didn't want to subject my mental health to that content in that moment. But yeah, I think it's always important to, create self-awareness and ask yourself if there's something you can learn from the engagement, even if that means unfollowing or blocking while you take the time and space to try to figure that out.
I absolutely love it. This is so helpful. So in regards to the example that you just gave, while some of your friends were getting engaged or whatever the case may be, do you owe them an explanation as to why you unfollowed them, or not even?
I don't think I actually explained to anybody. I think it could be helpful to explain if, and I'll give you an example of something I just wrote about. If you have recently suffered fertility issues, a miscarriage, a pregnancy loss, and you have a good friend who gets pregnant, that's a conversation that probably should happen, right? I am so happy for you. And also, I'm in a period of grief for myself right now. Here is how I need to engage with you right now, or here's what I need from you to both support and celebrate you while also protecting my mental health. But if it's something like, when I had my concussion and I couldn't work out and couldn't exercise, I unfollowed a lot of fitness accounts because it just made me feel like a combination of jealous and frustrated that I couldn't perform at that level. And I didn't let anybody know. I just unfollowed. And when I was ready, I followed again and called it good.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. And these are like, it seems so simple, but I imagine most people don't do this, but this is tangible. And these are ways that you can start feeling better right away. And doesn't matter why you're feeling better. It's because there's less stuff around that triggers you, whatever the case may be. And then you can kind of come home a little bit easier, or have a great foundation inside your home. And we're talking about social media right now and triggers. That's pretty obvious. Like, oh, I hopped on Instagram and this person triggered me. But what are some other ways that people can tune into themselves a little bit more deeply and check in with themselves? I know you do an awesome job of talking about this too.
Yeah. So when it comes to boundaries, kind of the red flag that I like to use, I want everyone listening to imagine a person. And when you think of this person, you just feel this immediate sense of like, ugh, like no. Right? It's the person where they text you and you just turn your phone over and you're like, I can't even. It's the person where when they walk by at work, you're like avoiding or pretending that you're busy because you don't want to talk to them. It's the person where someone says, like, oh, this person's coming to town for a visit. And you're like, oh my God, I got to like steel myself to spend an entire evening with this person. Those are all huge red flags that you need to pay attention to your needs, your feeling, your comfort, and a boundary is needed. So sometimes you can use those external cues, whether it's a trigger or a feeling, to help you tap into, okay, there's something here I need to look at, and then purposefully create space to examine what that is and what you might need to do about it.
Oh, good. Listen, do you meditate or do you have any practices like that where you can really connect, or I should say maybe disconnect?
Yes, I meditate every day. It's part of my post-workout routine. So I go to the gym, I process my feelings physically in the body, right? I move through all the big feelings physically with my workout. And then I'm a little bit more calm and a little bit more grounded, and I'm able to sit down and drop into my meditation practice. And I've been doing this probably 5 years now or 6 years now after every single workout. And what I do in the meditation kind of varies. Sometimes I go through a kind of in my head meditation process where I think about things I'm grateful for and I think about setting an intention for the day. Sometimes I talk to God or the universe or my spirit guides and I ask for help or guidance. Sometimes I talk to younger Melissa. Sometimes I talk to parallel timeline Melissa and I'm like, hey, we're doing so much better over there. Like, what did we do to get there? It's a wild process, but it's really grounding for me. It's incredibly helpful. Like when I tell you that I get signs and signals all the time that are really, really helpful. And it's like a nice part of my morning routine that helps me start the day feeling really centered.
There's so much alignment here. We're gonna land the plane with this, and I'm happy I saved this for last. I've become extremely spiritual over the last few years. My relationship with God strengthens every single day. And I'm Jewish. I grew up Jewish, but if I'm being honest, like I'm not super religious. What's
Mhm.
most important to me is my relationship with God, and that strengthens every single day. And I can't talk about the spirituality stuff enough, if I'm being honest. You mentioned two things there. You mentioned talking to God or the universe. Same. I do the same. What is the difference, or are they all connected? Like how do you view that, like tapping into vibrations and then also God and so forth, and
Yeah,
also based upon your background, like where are you at with that?
I think it's all the same. So I'm the same as you. I was raised Catholic and then abandoned any religious practice for a really, really long time until I realized, which no one tells you, but they should, you can do it any way you want. You can have your own relationship with God any way you want. You don't have to use an intermediary. There doesn't have to be some like old white man translating God's word for you. You can literally do whatever you want. And so I treat God like my best friend. And it's God, it's he, it's she, it's the universe, it's mother nature, it's my spirit guides, it's my higher power, my intuition, all interchangeably. And
Mm.
I have these connections with God or whatever, when I hike, when I meditate, when I travel, when I pray, and we have the kind of relationship where, like, my God is very East Coast. He has a wicked sense of humor. He is so incredibly blunt. He does not pull any punches. And it's like that's the kind of relationship we have, and it feels incredibly comforting to me.
This is so intimate and relatable to me. Intuition, God, the universe, all of it connected. Do you feel like you're at a place now where like everything is divine, like the manifestations and like things happening exactly as they're supposed to?
In a practical way, I think. I do love the idea of the energy that you put out into the universe, you get back. And I like the idea of, manifesting in that when you expect good things to happen, it alerts your brain to look for good things and you're probably more likely to notice good things. But with a healthy dose of like good things happen to me pretty often because I have a lot of privilege because I walk around the world white and straight and thin and pretty and able-bodied, and that's a lot. There's a lot of privilege in that. And if my manifestations or my wishes don't come true, it doesn't mean I like didn't do it hard enough, right? There are some things like illness or death that we can't manifest our way out of. So it's like, I guess if you'd have to balance it, I would say I'm like 70% hippie and 30% suit. Like there's a blend in there.
And always a little bit marry the spiritual with the practical.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge the systemic factors of the world we actually live in when we are talking about these spiritual practices. But again, that is what works for me. And if there's a different approach or a different relationship that you want to have with the universe that works better for you, like you should absolutely do that.
Yeah, this is so good. And what you said, I totally agree. Like, as if you were like a radio, like which frequency are you tuned into? And you want to be conscious and intentional with what you're tuned into. And also something that I've really learned, and I love to say this to my community and to my clients, is like, if you're not loving the results that you're getting in your life right now, it's also feedback from the
Mhm.
universe. You're probably tuned into a less than stellar frequency, and it's an opportunity to change that.
Yes. I remember a meditation I did in May of 2022. I sat down and I said to God and the universe, like, I don't feel good. I am working so hard and I'm crushing it in the gym and I'm crushing it at work. And like, and I feel worse and worse every day. And immediately I got the message, slow down. You're doing too much. Like it was broadcast into my head. And I was like, okay, when I get messages that strong, I pay attention and I changed everything. I stopped lifting super heavy and I started walking more and doing lighter weight and taking more days off and being outside more in the sunshine. And I reprioritized sleep and I took more time off of social media and everything got better. So that's like one such example of me tuning into the wrong frequency with the best of intentions and then realizing like something needed to change and pivoting in the right direction.
But I love how like you ask God, like I'm thinking in my head, like reveal yourself in the most amazing ways. Like what should I do? Like what should I
Yeah.
change? Sometimes you
Yeah.
just need to slow down.
God literally was like, "Do less, dumbass." And I was like, "Okay. Okay. All right, heard."
I know you're kind of kidding, but I also know you're dead serious when you say he said, slow down, dumbass.
No, that's literally what he said
No, I
into
know.
my head. Yeah. Yeah.
I totally get it. But
Yeah.
I'm sure other people probably think you're kidding, but I know you're not.
Yeah, I'm not. And my relationship with God, I think, is if you are incredibly religious, I get feedback sometimes that people feel like I might be making fun of or somehow detracting from like his greatness. And that could not be further from the truth. I have, of course, the utmost respect and love, but the way that I engage happens to be incredibly effective and incredibly, like, I guess, realistic. Like, we have conversations like two friends would. And I think that's what makes it feel so special.
I feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we landed the plane with that.
Yeah.
Um, I could talk to you all day. For our listeners, I know they're gonna fall in love with you in 2 seconds. What's the best way for them to follow along to support you? And also, I think I know the answer, but what are you most excited about right now?
Um, well, I think right now I'm in the middle of writing the next Whole30 book, and I'm really excited about that. So just kind of revising our voice and the tone and making it more inclusive and more empathetic. That's really exciting for me. But that won't come out for like another year or so.
A
But
year?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It's a cookbook too. There are going to be recipes, and because it prints in full cover, it's color, it's got to get printed overseas, and that whole process takes so much longer these days than it used to take, like post COVID. It's a whole big thing. So yeah, that won't come out until 2024, but I'm working on it now. But you can find out more about me at Melissa U. So my Instagram is Melissa U, website is melissau.com, TikTok is Melissa_U, and everything Whole30 is just whole and the number 30.
I absolutely love it. How many books have you written now?
8,
Wow. And you're just getting warmed up.
9, maybe 9. I
So
lose track sometimes. Yeah, it's
many,
been quite a few.
so many you lost count.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you. Hang up for 1 second. I want to connect with you after.
Yeah,
Melissa, I want
sounds
you to-
great.
yeah. I want you to know you the definition of perspective, authenticity, and unbelievable energy. From taking your life experience to spreading positivity, light, and deep truths. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thanks so much for having me, Craig. It was a great conversation.
That was special. I love talking to you.
I didn't think we'd have the God thing in common. Sometimes I throw that out there and I'm like, are people going to take this or are they going to be like, oh, is she going to get like weird Jesus freak on me?
But so I was kind of gauging, like we're like getting to know you a little bit and building rapport. And I felt like it was an alignment. And I thought it would
Yeah.
be good to open up about that.
Yeah. I love it. I'll always talk about that because, like I said, no one ever told me that you could do it this way. I had to like figure it out on my own, and it took me a lot longer than it probably needed to.
100% agree. Let's stay connected. I'd love to build a friendship.
Yeah, that sounds great. Congrats on the new book. What's it going to be about?
It's called the Reinvention Formula. It's with Wiley. Comes out August 15th. So about 3 months out now. So as you know, it's like a sprint and going crazy and all that stuff. I'm excited about it. Just have a million things going on. That we're so busy with the brand and so forth. But I love this stuff. I'm having so much fun. I'd
Good.
never been happier. I'd never been more alive.
Oh, I'm really happy to hear that. That's great. It comes through obviously in the work that you do and the conversations, and so that's great.
Yeah. Thank you so much.